Hello and welcome back to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and today I am coming to you from a campground in South Dakota, near Mount Rushmore. So I've been on the road for the past few weeks in what we've been calling the Lancaster Farming National Hemp Tour. I've been traveling around the country in a 30-foot RV with my wife and kids. We left at the end of June. Today is August 1st as I'm recording this, and we've been on a mission to visit hemp farms and businesses and entrepreneurs and, industry folks around the country on the fiber and grain side of the industry. Obviously, there are more people out there doing amazing things than we've got time and resources to cover, so I've had to be selective, and still it's been a way bigger endeavor than I guess I thought it would be. Bitten off a little more than I can chew, I guess. But anyway, so let's recap. Our first stops were scheduled for North Carolina, where I was going to meet up with Eric Henry from TS Designs in Burlington, and then Gary Sykes, a hemp farmer in Polkton, North Carolina. But the universe had other ideas. We blew a tire out on the interstate, and it took us the better part of July 1st and 2nd to get help from RV Shares Roadside Assistance, and then to get all new tires on this RV. To be honest, the owner of the RV should have never let us rent this RV with the tires in the condition that they were in. But anyway, the owner replaced all 6 tires for us, and while we were in North Carolina. So we missed those first stops on the tour, and we are on a schedule, so we had to keep moving. Our first official stops then were in Kentucky. First in Murray, where I caught up with Greg Wilson from Hempwood and Dr. Tony Brannon from Murray State University. Then we traveled on up to Carrollton, Kentucky, and met with Chad Rosen at Victory Hemp. From there, we headed to Kansas, and we talked to the folks at South Bend Industrial Hemp. They just installed a decorticator from Formation Ag, and they are on their way to creating, the local supply chain there in Kansas. So they had an open house that night, and I met a lot of great people there. Then it was on to Colorado, first to Fort Collins to catch up with Morris Beagle. He's the founder of NOCO and a bunch of other cool hemp product businesses. He's also the host of Let's Talk Hemp. It's a podcast which hopefully you're listening to. And we talked mostly about Silver Mountain hemp guitars, some of which were actually made with hemp wood from Murray, Kentucky. Then I went across town to see Wendy Mosher from New West Genetics to hear about their work in fiber and grain genetics. Then we traveled to the San Luis Valley of Colorado to Monte Vista down in the south, where I talked to Corbett Hefner and Randy Wright from Formation Ag. I got a tour of the shop where they custom build hemp harvesting and processing equipment. I saw the decorticator in action. It was fantastic. From there, we headed up to the Pacific Northwest, and we took a couple of days off to recharge by the redwoods and the Pacific Ocean. Then we were off again on the hemp tour. We went up to northern Oregon, and we caught up with Tanya Farman and Greg Necco from Queen of Hearts Hemp and Hemp Northwest. Then we headed east to Adams, Oregon, where I talked to John Green and Marissa Bumgardner about their fiber crops and their plans to build a hempcrete timber frame house on the edge of the Umatilla Indian Reservation. Then Greg Necco took me out to a grain hemp field outside of Walla Walla, Washington, 30 acres of lush green grain hemp surrounded by miles and miles of garbanzo beans. Then we drove through the Palouse region of Washington, where they grow lots of wheat and all kinds of good stuff. And finally we reached Fort Benton, Montana, home of IND Hemp, one of our sponsors for the tour and for the podcast. Ken Elliott, he's the president of IND Hemp. He wanted to have a hemp event for us when we were in town. And he invited a bunch of people that he called the movers and shakers in the fiber and grain space. And people showed up. What an event it was. He kept saying it was for me, but it was not for me. This is for the industry, the grain and fiber industry. So the folks at IND Hemp provided this opportunity for the grain and fiber people to get together to talk about the issues that the industry faces, how to work towards solving these issues. It was an historic meeting for sure. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I tried to be as prepared as possible. I had my mobile podcasting rig with me, boxes of t-shirts and hats and copies of Lancaster Farming newspaper. Plus I had all the literature from some of our sponsors, New Holland Ag and National Hemp Association. The New Holland brochure is actually printed on hemp paper. I really like the way New Holland is approaching hemp. It's slow and steady, but they're committed to this over the long haul. And of course, there's many benefits to becoming a member of the National Hemp Association. So anyway, I was ready for whatever, but at a certain point I realized that my main job here was just to be present, to be a witness to what was happening. And I guess I expected that I would set up my mobile rig in a side room and interview people one by one throughout the day. And I did set up my rig, but I didn't interview anyone. But I'll get to that in a bit. So my family and I rolled into Fort Benton on Sunday, and I spent Monday making podcast episodes, and then I caught up with Ken Elliott from IND Hemp, and he showed me around the town and then gave me a tour of their new fiber plant on the north side of town. I think Ken just wanted to make sure that the RV was going to fit inside the building, because, Ken's a visionary, and part of his vision for this get-together was the RV parked inside the building where they were going to be hosting a banquet at the end of the day on Tuesday. And so I was confident that I could get Dolly, the RV, in through there, and turns out I was able to get it there. So anyway, that Monday night, people started sort of congregating over at the Elliott's house in town, and it was very, very informal and just casual and a lot of fun. They cooked burgers, and we all sat on the front porch and in the front lawn, just kind of shooting the breeze about the hemp space. But the next day was the big thing. So I was up early Tuesday morning and met up with everybody over at the Fort Benton Agricultural Museum right in town. That's where they were hosting everybody. And Morgan Elliott, she sort of got things going. She introduced her management team and, thanked everybody. And just, it was great. There was maybe, I want to say 30 people there. From all over the place, all different businesses and parts of the country. And some people I have interviewed already. Other people were new to me. But the next thing you know, I was on a bus headed out of town to see some hemp fields. The first one we stopped at was a dryland hemp field with a couple different varieties. And you could see that it was being affected by the drought conditions. The plants were small. But still, this is farming. This is, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature. And then from there, we piled back in the bus and we drove to an irrigated stand of hemp. It was about, maybe 95 acres. And yeah, it was big and tall and lush and beautiful. And, it was great during these sort of outings to the field. There was great conversations between some of the equipment manufacturers and Ben Brimlow, their agronomist at IND Hemp, and you could just see the industry's gears turning. I wish I had better words to explain how sort of monumental this was, and how, I think in 20 years you might look back at these moments and be like, yeah, it happened here. It started here. And so I'm grateful that I got to witness this. On the bus, I sat next to Morris Beagle, and we talked about all kinds of stuff. Now, we talked about the Southern Hemp Expo, which is at the beginning of September. So yeah, I thought it was interesting that the media coverage of this was podcasters. There was me, there was Morris Beagle from Let's Talk Hemp, and Joy Beckerman from Hemp Barons was there too. And that's, to me, just sort of speaks to the new paradigm nature of this industry. Traditional media wasn't there, mainstream media wasn't there, but we were there to witness this because this was indeed something that needed to be witnessed. So after the field trips to the hemp fields, we went back to the Agricultural Museum, and we had lunch, and the staff at IND Hemp, they they spread out all of the Lancaster farming swag that I had, T-shirts and hats and newspapers. So everybody got to take some of our Lancaster farming stuff. We do have extras. So if you're interested in getting some shirts or maybe some hats, drop me a line, send me an email to podcast@lancasterfarming. They're really nice shirts. Anyway, so after lunch, the big group split into two groups. There was the grain side and there was the fiber side. So Morgan Elliott led the conversation with the grain folks, and Trey Riddle, who is working with IND Hemp now, he led the discussion on the fiber side. And it was fascinating. They talked about sort of case studies and, what the industry needs, and they identified a lot of the problems in the industry as well as the opportunities. And so there was a lot covered, and I'm not going to do justice to it in this podcast today, but what I am going to do over the next few weeks once I get home is interview people who were there, interview them in depth, and bring you that information. But for me, a few things stuck out. First is that the fiber and grain side of the hemp industry is really sort of handicapped by all of the cannabinoid stuff out there. It seems like all the regulations are sort of geared toward cannabinoid production, when you got people over here growing fiber and grain who don't care about the THC levels. It has nothing to do with their final products. And so it seems like the fiber and grain side is sort of hamstrung by these cannabinoid regulations. And there's anger on the side of the grain people, because they're growing food. I heard the guys from Victory Hemp say, hey, we're making food here, not edibles. And that is such just like a poignant comment. It's like, why should these people who are making food, why should they be held to these regulations that are set up for cannabinoid production? So there's just so much work that needs to be done. There needs to be a unifying voice representing the hemp industry, the fiber and grain side. Jeff Whaling from the National Hemp Association was there, and he pointed out that the hemp industry has an identity crisis. Maybe we think we're a whole lot bigger than we actually are. So I don't know, there was just a lot of fascinating discussion throughout the day. And then again, coming back to Ken Elliott and his, mission, he talks about, having a business with a heart, and that the work that the industry doing here needs that. You need this thing. It's got to be about more than just profits. Although it has to make sense for the farmers, because without the farmers, this industry is nowhere. So farmers have to come first. Farmers have to get paid, and it just has to make sense for their bottom line. And hemp's going to get nowhere until it can compete with some of those other commodity prices. There was a lot of discussion about, what the industry can do, what is the role of government in this. It's just there's so much to figure out, but there's so much positive momentum. Just the fact that all of these people sort of converged in Fort Benton, essentially the middle of nowhere, Montana. I'm not saying that disparagingly. Fort Benton is a beautiful town with a great history and clearly a great future. But it goes back to, really, I think, back to Ken's work, because he was able to get everybody to come out here for this thing, including me. It is not lost on me how special this was. And so after the two groups, split up and talked about, individual issues on their side of the industry, then everybody got together for sort of a recap. And again, just excellent conversation was generated. My role here was just to witness it. I did shoot a bunch of video out in the field and a few times during the day during these discussions. The audio is not great, but it's a document of this industry coming together. And so that portion of the day sort of closed around 4:30 or so, and then we all took a break and then reconvened up at the plants for tours. There was a tour of the oilseed plant, which I didn't go to because I was busy bringing the RV into the fiber plant, which that was fun too. Morgan Elliott's fiance, Logan, he helped me navigate Dolly in through. It's just this serpentine of, great big decortication machines. But then I did go on a tour of the fiber plant. This was led by Trey Riddle, who some of you know from Sunstrand, but he is a smart, knowledgeable, passionate individual who is now part of IND Hemp's management team. And he brings a lot to the table as far as experience goes, assembling these decortication systems. So, I'll have video of his tour of the machine at lancasterfarming.com as soon as I can get that up. Which brings me to a point, like, it's incredibly difficult to publish content from the road, even to make podcasts from the road. So we've been out here for the entire month of July. Like I said, today's August 1st, and it's constant. We're constantly moving, constantly working, writing, feeding my family, trying to maintain the RV and be safe on the road. There's just so much going on that it's going to take me sort of weeks to sort of like figure out what just happened once we get home. But we will be home soon. Hope to be home this Thursday. So here's what it is from today. So we're at a campground near Mount Rushmore. We're heading up to Rapid City this morning. I'm going to talk to a guy named Jeremy, who is creating what I believe to be a hempcrete recording studio in Rapid City. So we're going to check that out. So that'll be an episode in the next, probably sometime this week or next week. Then on Tuesday, August 3rd, I'm going to be down in Lincoln, Nebraska, where the folks there are making a big push for oilseed production. So there'll be like a oilseed demonstration. Might see some hemp fields in and around Lincoln. I'm going to meet Robert Burns from DeSmet Rose Downs, one of our sponsors. He's the one who a few weeks ago told me about hemp-fed bacon. So he said he saved me a little bit of that. So that's exciting. And then after Nebraska, we hightail it east. We need to get to Pennsylvania by the morning of August 5th. And we're going to go to the Project PA Hemp Home that's being built by Don Services in conjunction with Amerishon Cast Hemp and sponsored by the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. So that's going to be just this warm homecoming. I'm looking forward to that. And my family and I, we're also looking forward to just getting home, back to our house, to see our dog, to see our family, to give my mom a hug, all that stuff. I want to check in on my garden, like, how are my tomatoes? Have my nephews been watering my tomatoes? We'll see. So this has been just a crazy trip. I still can't believe that it's happening. So I'm babbling a little bit here, but I just want you all to know how very grateful I am for this opportunity, and for the folks at IND Hemp and that event that they hosted, the hospitality and warmth and love that just emanates from their family. Like, here's a group of smart, passionate, caring people who want to make a difference in the world and who, I would argue, are already making a difference in the world. And to be part of that it's so special, and that I get to share this with an audience too. It's surreal, and it's a dream come true. And thank you. But getting back to Ken Elliott and his daughter Morgan and their whole family, it's so inspiring. The giant vision that they have, it's not only a vision for the hemp industry and a vision for farmers, it's a vision for environmental reasons, and also like to revitalize the town of Fort Benton. This gorgeous little town. You can see that it's sort of past its former glory days, but as they're building this giant manufacturing site on the edge of town, you can just feel the excitement. Like it's good things are coming to Fort Benton. And I love, like, symbolically that, in the old days it was this, the edge of the frontier. All of the goods, a lot of the goods were shipped out to the frontier from Fort Benton. And again, it's sort of poised now to be, this, it's this town on the edge of a frontier. The frontier is a little different because it's a little abstract, but, here we are in the 21st century. We've got just absolute environmental crisis. Like we drove past so many fires. The West is burning down, and it's from a changing climate. And here's some people who are actively working to change the way we operate. So after the full day summit, there was a break, and then there was the tours of the plant, and then there was a dinner. Up at the plant. There was some local beer made with local hemp, and there was, delicious food, barbecue and brisket, and, all kinds of good stuff. And Ken got up and he spoke a little bit, and then Brad Wenger from New Holland, he got up and he gave a presentation and talked about how New Holland Ag is committed to hemp. And, there was great discussion about the equipment needed and what's available. And again, I'm so impressed with how New Holland is just in the space. They're not rushing it, but they're not ignoring it. It's good. And then a representative from an organization called Well Done got up and gave a presentation. And I will be digging in on this a little bit more in a future podcast episode. But just to give you the highlights here, so he talked about orphan wells, not Orson Welles, but orphan wells, oil and gas wells that have been abandoned by the energy companies because either they're not productive anymore or they just don't want to deal with them. But there's millions of these things all over the world, and a whole lot of them here in the United States out on farmland that are just spewing methane, right? Just, they said something like enough, like 1,500 cars worth of methane being spewed by these individual wells, on a yearly basis. So this company, Well Done, caps them. They fill them with concrete and other materials. And the reason it was tied in with hemp is that hemp herds can be used to fill some of these void spaces in the wells, and it's a way to stop the methane and also capture carbon. And it's fascinating work that they're doing, and it just goes to show that IND Hemp is thinking about not just what's good for IND Hemp, but what's good for the planet, what's good for other businesses. They have this, like, we're all in it together attitude, which I really, really respect. So after the banquet was over, we sort of cleaned up and packed up, and my family and I were on the road the next morning, on our way through Wyoming, and now we're here in South Dakota, and we're headed east. So I know this is not my normal kind of podcast. There's no real interview today, but I just wanted to acknowledge the amazing thing I witnessed there in Montana, in Fort Benton, with the IND Hemp people and all of the other industry folks that were there. The Bish brothers were there from Bish Enterprises. The folks from Victory Hemp were there. Tillery Sims from Texas. Of course, Morris Beagle and Joy Beckerman were there. Corbett Hefner from Formation Ag was there. All kinds of people. I'm not gonna be able to list everybody, but there's a ton of people there. People from North 40, Hempitecture, the National Hemp Co-op, the National Hemp Association, so many different people, and I'm not going to be able to list them all right now, but I am going to take the next few weeks, months, even to connect with these people who were there, maybe to sort of reconstruct this event, but also to hear about what they're doing. Like I just met a whole ton of people, and I'm going to be bringing you some amazing conversations from the hemp space over the next few weeks and months. So I am very grateful to IND Hemp for putting this together, and I look forward to getting home and sorting it all out and making sense of everything, and record podcasts from my little home studio. I know some of the past episodes, the sound quality has been all over the place, so I apologize for that, and I appreciate your understanding. So yeah, it has been a transformative trip, and just how transformative it's been, I don't know yet, but I can feel that this was good. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there today. Thank you for listening to me babble about this. And of course, stay tuned to future episodes. You'll hear how the rest of the trip has gone, and I will let you know when I'm safely back in Pennsylvania. Possibly you've been following along on our Instagram feed at LF Podcast Hemp. I've been posting lots of pictures up there. So anyway, my name is Eric Herlock. I'm the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns, please send an email to podcast@lancasterfarming.com. And also, speaking of lancasterfarming.com, make sure you sign up for our newsletter. We have a hemp newsletter that goes out every week. It's got industry stories and links to podcasts and all kinds of different things. And while you're there, might as well get a subscription to Lancaster Farming Newspaper too. You can either get the print edition mailed to you, or you can sign up for the e-edition and just have it delivered to your inbox every Friday morning. So, all right, well, thanks again for listening. Until next time, I will see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
This episode of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2021 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show is written and recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock, and any music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tim Bird's Chateau.